Good morning, Dr. Bob.
Good afternoon, Brother Yuku. How are you?
Yes, thanks.
You're okay?
Yes, like that.
Okay, let's see. We've got 6, 7, 8. We've got lots of people. Okay, so it's time to start. Let's open in prayer. Father, I ask that you minister to all of the people in this course, Lord, and I pray you'll help us, Lord, to move forward. And I pray that you'll help us to make good decisions, Lord, and I pray that we'll be able to understand what we're discussing. Pray that you'll help us, Lord, to be faithful workers. And I ask that your blessing will be on us in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we have almost everybody. So Brother Imran says he's in a lot of pain. His knee is really hurting him, and that's scary to me because when you injure your knee, I don't know anything about stuff like this, but it can go for a long time. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. We'll pray for Brother Imran because he is in a lot of pain, he said, because of an injury from an accident. You all can hear me now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Sorry about
Yes,
that.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right. So we have a couple of different things to do today. And since we have almost everybody here, Brother Kenneth William is in with ICF up in Murray right now. I don't know how to say that word, but anyway, up in Murray, they're doing a week of special classes at Camp Mubarak, and so he was planning on attending class every day, but they don't have signal up there, and so he's not able to get on the internet at all, which I think that would be a blessing and a curse. I think it's more blessing than it is curse. I'm not sure. All right. So let me tell you what I need to make a class decision, and I'm going to share my screen for a minute with a schedule, so I can just show this to you. All right, not that schedule. No, that's not the right schedule. Let's try it again. I'm not sure I can do this. Let's see if this will work. All right, can you all see? I guess you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Yeah, it says I'm screen sharing, so that's good. So I think you can see this. It's a schedule that has Monday through Friday, and then over on the right side, it has Saturday and Sunday, and it has what we've done so far. And this is in yellow, and then this is in green. That's chapter 2. And this is in blue. That's chapter 3. And this orange is chapter 4. And then 2 lectures, it's chapter 5. Obviously, it'll be an easy chapter. And then 2 summaries. So I figured something out. Yes.
Sir, I'm not sure if I can view the same page that you are showing. I can see on the leftmost column written Christy Kid, Matt
That's no
Kid.
good. That's no good. Okay, thank you. I was worried that might happen. So let's stop that. Thank you so much, because I was worried that that might happen. We'll do it again. Here we go. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Although you
Yes, sir,
could,
now we can see.
now you can see it. What you saw before was my schedule for our summer with our daughter Christy and her kids. So there you go. All right, here we go. All right, this is a possible schedule. Now something happened. I figured out Ashura is on Wednesday and Thursday, and next week, and nobody's coming to the university on Wednesday and Thursday. It's generally speaking not a good idea to be out and about on Wednesday and Thursday, and but we're online, so we could have class. And if we had class on Wednesday and Thursday, doing exactly the same thing we've been doing, if we had class on Wednesday and Thursday, here would be our advantage in doing that. It means that because we having class on Wednesday and Thursday, plus we're doing 15 minutes extra every day, that we would be able to finish this course in 2 weeks, except for the final outlines that you're going to hand in to me. And that would be very nice for me, not necessary, but very nice for me, make my life easier. My life doesn't need to be easier, but it would make my life easier, but it might make your lives easier too. It means that the last class we would have would be on the 27th of August. And the only extra thing we would do is have class on Ashura on Wednesday and Thursday, 18 and 19. So what do you all, let's expand here. What do you all think about this idea? We have a vote. Samuel's our first vote. And somebody has a chat.
Sir, I have no issues. I am agree with your planning and can join the class.
Okay. So there's no issues with that. Anybody else? I need to know if you're against this, if this is going to be difficult. Yes, Ishan, you have something? No? Does anybody have anything?
It's okay for me.
It's okay for you, all right.
Yes, sir, agreed, and it's okay.
All right. Okay, so I think I've got a majority here. Anybody that would have a problem with it?
So no problem from my side.
Okay, Dowd says to take a vote by raise of hand. Let's do that. So you all know how to do that, right? I've got 3 hands raised. 4, 5, 6. Arshad already said it was okay, but he needs to raise his hand too. It says 9 participants have raised their hands.
And sir, you are also agree with it, and you should also raise hand and make the voting more strengthened.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely in favor of it. I'm super in
So,
favor of it.
so,
I don't
so
even know how to,
it makes 10 people are agree and majority is authorities. So let's do it.
there you go. I think they can, I don't even know how to,
Yes, I also agree.
okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, then that's what we'll do. I'll publish the schedule. Um, it'll be a nice schedule. I promise it'll not be something that'll be scary. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. Okay. Number 2, Zenaria. I asked you to fill in that form. What do you think about the form? Do you think that that's something that's difficult to do, or is it not a problem?
Sir, I think it's not difficult. Like it's easy to do. So I did not. I was filling that form, and it's not like difficult. So I think it's easy.
Okay. All right. So let me share with you all. I don't know. Some of you are not going to be happy. I don't know what's going to happen. But what I did was, I need to grade. I need to mark on Zenaria's. I sent you all Zenaria's paper, but without marking it. And I didn't send you the Yakub's and Arshad's and Ruxar's. That's not because I was being lazy yesterday. But what I did was I created a form in Airtable. And let me explain why I did this. I created a form that is going to be your outline. And the reason I did it, and there's a general problem that, Zishan, do you have a question?
No, sir, I don't have question. I just raised hand when you
Okay.
asked for voting.
Okay, so hallelujah. We're good then. So I created a form in Airtable. And the reason I created a form is that I have had this experience a lot, not a few times, a lot, that when I give a specific format, I want students, even postgraduate students, to follow. My experience has been that about 3/4 of them don't follow the format anyway. I don't. That just seems to be. It seems to be the normal thing, and I've had this happen to me dozens and dozens of times, and so that's why I created the form for your church, your imaginary church, because I wanted everybody to have the same format, so that they would make sure that everybody answered all the questions that were important. All right, so that's why I did that format, and so I have a form now, and the form that I have is very similar. It's for the outline, and I followed Zenaria's program because it's her way of doing it seemed to work fine. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a schedule for you all for a schedule that will give you plenty of time to finish your outlines, and they're going to be complete outlines, even more than complete. They're going to have extra information in them, but all of the information is going to come through using the form. And so by filling in the form with all of the information for your outline, everybody will have the same point, not the same points, but the same approach to it. And what that will do for you and what that will do for me is I will be able to mark all of you on the same basis. None of you will lose points for not having the right form. And none of you will lose points because you don't have enough points or you don't have enough application, because it's all not enough scripture. It's all there in the form. And so I will set up a schedule. I'll set up the form, and there are 5 chapters now, and I have the schedule that I showed you for a second, you're going to see that I will send that to you. I will put it, I'll put it on WhatsApp and I'll send it to you. And I'll put it on Moodle. And I'll make it very clear what the schedule is. And the schedule will be reasonable, but it will expect you to get the work done. And it will have all 5 chapters. And plus a summary, which will be different. And what will happen is that it will force you to think without wasting your time worrying if you have the right format for the outline, because the form will create will get all the information from you that I need. Okay, so that's what the plan is. So I've completed the form. I have to go through the form and proof check it to make sure it's okay and to clarify it. And once I've done that, then I will, and I have to the actual days for the schedule. Now that we voted that we're willing to study on Ashura, that means we only do 5 weeks of classes rather than 6, which for me will be awesome because I have a field forum for missionaries in the country of Dominican Republic on the 30th of August. Now I'll be able to go to that field forum and not have to worry about class. And so that will be very helpful for me. But I also think it'll be helpful for you. I really would like all of you to have some break in between the end of summer semester and the beginning of fall. That would be very nice. Okay, so I'm ready to start. Oh, so I have 2 more pieces of business. One is I put together a lecture for today. As a shorter lecture, I also want to do some discussion. And so I can do, let's see, there's a chat here. Okay, I think we're good on the chats. All right. Okay. So Zishan, your hand is still raised. Do you have a question?
No, sir.
How do you unraise
Sir.
your hand? I have no idea.
Okay, sir. I'll do it, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
No problem. Yakub, do you have a question? I don't think so. All right. So first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the discussion that I had. Let me look at what I need to do. Give me a second here. I just have to check this. Yes. Class. Okay, so. All right, just a second. I've got to just check this one thing. Okay, that's good. Thank you. All right, here we go. A couple days ago, I did a lecture on the model of Jesus, which is not Pauline theology, but that's okay. The model of Jesus for ministry. And I don't think it's accidental. And so the model of Jesus is Jesus preached to everyone, but then there were several thousand who were called his disciples. And Luke purposely uses that word disciples so that we know that these people identify themselves as following Jesus. Then we have another group we call the 70. Those are people that Jesus actually gave authority to heal and to preach that the kingdom of God had come near. And he sent them out in groups of 2. So that those 70 had a special relationship with Jesus. And those 70 were taught by Jesus in a very special way. But then, of course, we have the 12 apostles. 12 apostles are very different from the 70, although there is similarity because the 12 apostles were sent out first 2 by 2 to do ministry, and then the 70 were sent out in the next chapter. And so there's that similarity, But the 12 apostles are obviously very different. They went with Jesus everywhere. Almost everywhere. So we got the 70 who have a special relationship with Jesus. Jesus gives them ministry responsibilities that are important ministry responsibilities. I mean, to go around healing the sick and proclaiming the kingdom of God is near, that seems pretty important. But the apostles obviously are way closer to Jesus. And then we have the three, Peter, James, and John. And they're in a completely different category. I mean, they're part of the 12, but Jesus takes them to the Mount of Transfiguration. And that's interesting. Why didn't the 12? Why weren't the 12 at the Mount of Transfiguration? I don't know. But the three were. James is the first one to die. John is the last one to die. And Peter is the rock upon which he's going to build his church. So those three are very important in Jesus' ministry. When Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, in the night he's betrayed, when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, you notice that although the 12 are there in the garden with him, he goes aside and he takes Peter, James, and John to be with him. And I said in the lecture that Jesus is vulnerable in that event, surprisingly vulnerable. He says, my soul is grieving to the point of death. Stay here with me and watch with me. Well, they didn't do it. They slept. But I think that Jesus had them there for his own comfort. I don't think that he had them there to learn something, because they slept. So I think that I'm not sharing a screen right now. No, I'm not, but thank you for telling me that. That was very helpful. Yeah. I could share the screen from that, but I just didn't do it. So basically, this was the lecture that we did already on Wednesday, I think. And what is interesting, and then we have Peter. So we go from everybody to thousands to 70 to 12 to 3 to 1. I think that this is not accidental. I think that Jesus on purpose did this ministry, 3.5 years of ministry. And I think he on purpose had this grouping of people, because I think he had different plans for each one of those groups. He had a plan that there'd be people who would do ministry. That's the 70. He had a plan for people who were going to be sort of like the elders in a church. That's the 12. You know, he gave some as apostles and prophets and evangelists and pastors and teachers. And I think that those apostles are sort of like pastors. And then he has the 3 who are people he does a special investment of ministry into. And then there's the 1, Peter. Now, here's the deal. I think this is a model for us. Our goal is to transform the church. We've got 10 years to do it. I don't think it's possible in 10 years, but that's okay. So our goal is to do that. But what I've said again and again and again and again, I've said that we can't do this transformation through a program, through classes, through organization. Not really. We have to do it through personal, one-on-one. Oh, good morning, Imran. Where are you? There you are. So Imran, do you have anything you'd like to share with us that we can pray for you about or anything? Or talk to us for a minute. How are you feeling? Imran, tell us how you're doing. If you don't want to, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. But I'm glad you're here. Okay. All right. So what I'm saying is this: if God wants us to transform the church by transforming people, then I think we've got a model. We minister to everybody, we preach to everybody, but then there's the congregation, and the congregation that's where we put our that's like the 70 or maybe the thousands. No, that's like the thousands. And then there are people in the congregation that we invest into ministry. And those are people who are just doing all kinds of different ministries, Sunday school and ministries of outreach and ministries of caring for the poor. We have those ministries going on. But then we have our elders. They're like the 12. We have our elders. Now, I don't think we could do 12. I don't know how we could do 12. But we could have like maybe, I don't know how many elders. Depends on how big the church is. So you might have 6 elders, you might have 8 elders, you might have 4 elders. 6 elders, 8 elders, 4 elders. You've got your elders. And in your elders, that you have to have a very close relationship with those people. And you have to be working with those people in a very close relationship, right? I mean, because they're elders, they have to have a deeper understanding of the Word of God. And that's something that's going to require your relationship with them. Now, when I was a pastor, no, not when I was a pastor, I was an elder in a church. And we met, I think I mentioned this once before, we met together every Sunday morning at 6 a.m. I think it was 6, might have been 7. I think it was 6, but it could have been 6 or 7 in the morning. And we met together and for prayer and for accountability and for just making sure everything was okay. Every Sunday morning. I know that's crazy because I was pastor for years and I know Sunday mornings are crazy time, but the pastor of that church, Pastor Jeff, he wanted this. He thought this would be good. And he would talk about the sermon. And so he would talk about the sermon and then we would pray together, and we met every week like that. Plus we also met other times as well. And so that we had a very, very deep bond among us. That's like the 12 apostles. So that, I don't know how many elders God would call you to have. You might have 6 elders, but that's this, how you're going to impact the church is really through those people. It's not really through the 70. It's not really through the people who are doing ministries. It's really through those elders. But then there might be 3 people, Jesus had the 3, Peter, James, and John, that you have a very deep ministry with. You meet together every week for prayer and Bible study and for accountability, and you just have that regular relationship with those people. And so what I'm saying is, here's a model for ministry. So I'm interested in hearing your comments. Is this even possible in Pakistan to have this, follow this kind of a model of ministry, which we see in Jesus? Is it not possible? You talk. If you don't say anything, I've got a lecture to do, so that's okay. The question is, what do you think about this model for Pakistan? Would it work?
So I think that this sharing thing is very important. What you just said, that we need to make sure that we regularly meet with elders or ministers, like just part of the plan. So I put in my plan this as well, that a circle sharing, like a group sharing, where everybody comes and they share their experiences and progress and challenges, and they pray together, so that for edification, for encouragement and correction. And I think that that is really effective when we share with each other how we're doing. And if somebody is falling or finding hard, then we can encourage them. somebody needs correction, then we can correct them. That's how what you say, that it won't be a program, but that's a intimacy, like we are growing as a body, as a family. So I think this thing is very effective that we need to keep in mind, not program, but what we say is as a family, as in growing together, sharing, and one-to-one, all that stuff. So I think this is very helpful.
So this is actually kind of a good thing in ministries in general, that if you have a Sunday school ministry, that the people who are serving, teaching the children in Sunday school really need to get together on a regular basis and pray together and be accountable to each other and to share with each other. Seriously, that's a very positive thing. If you've got if you have people that are involved in any ministry, they should come together and pray together. We had a ministry of outreach. We had a food ministry where we gave food to the poor, and the workers would all get together, and after everybody left, all the people who came for the food left, and after we cleaned up everything, then we would come together and we would pray together and share about what was going on and what we thought about what had happened. That's a very valuable thing to do. Often it can protect from burnout. Burnout is when people are involved in ministry and they just get overwhelmed and they just don't ever want to do ministry again. But if you come together, you build each other up, you're accountable to each other, you share with each other, and all of the people who are doing the ministry together, it can definitely avoid burnout. Other comments. Here's the model. You preach to everybody, then you've got your congregation of thousands, which I hope will never be anything close to that. And then you've got the people who are involved in the ministry, that's like the 70. And then you've got your elders, and then you've got 3 people that you're especially investing in. What do you think about this model? Is this going to work in Pakistan?
Sub, it can work in Pakistan, but what I personally feel in our Pakistani culture, uh, any change is not very easily acceptable to the people, or to, you can say, the leading people. So it is a very good model, but if we want to apply it on Pakistani church, it will take some time, and uh, uh, the ones who want to apply it have to work really hard to convince the other members about that model and its benefits, so that with the passage of time they understand it and adopt it. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I agree. There's another part of that lecture which you all need to look at in the PowerPoint and watch it again. And I talk about how Jesus got his apostles. That's kind of a weird way to say it, but how he developed the relationship with them, what he did. And he took like 2 years before he involved the apostles in active ministry. He took a long time, but it would take, I agree, Samuel, it would take 5 or 6 years before people would even believe in it. It would take a long, long time. You wouldn't want to start by changing things. You would want to start instead by developing relationships with people and then go from there. So, but I agree. It might not work. And it's a model, and so it's not necessary. But elders, over time, I would say that elders are necessary. not that you should have elders in, I mean, not that if you look at the scriptures and you say, yeah, there are elders, I can see that that's necessary. Yeah, we should have elders in our church. And you wouldn't start it next week. You wouldn't start it next month. You wouldn't start it next year. You would start it maybe in 5 years. You would need a lot of time to develop those people who could be elders first. And then you'd have to do a lot of preparation, and it might even be longer than 5 years. You'd have to do a lot of preparation of the congregation. But your own personal goals would be, my goal is that we're going to have elders. That would be your long-term plan. Hold on.
Dr. Bob, I will just share a challenge and an opportunity. Uh, uh, when I got back from Belfast Bible College, the ministry that I got involved into was discipleship, going into different churches and leading a discipleship classes. And one thing that I observed, uh, challenge is that if you advise something, or even you build a relationship, and if you advise something to the leaders in the church here in Pakistan, they take it as a challenge to their authority,
Right,
like you are challenging their authority.
right.
So one of the but there is always a solution, and the situations always leads what you can do about it. And maybe someday when you are back and we can sit, and I would look forward to have a meeting with you about it, that how we have done it in the past years, but it's nothing close to what we really want to see. And you are right that it takes a lot of time. Secondly, I want to talk about the opportunity. The thing that I see is really important are the cell groups. Cell groups. Churches are just not should not meet only on Sundays. The problem happens is when you just have a Sunday church and then you leave the people for the rest of the whole week. Um I think the involvement should be somewhere continuing, either in the form of prayer meeting or in the form of Bible study, maybe in the form of church fellowships. Not, I'm saying every day, but
Did we lose you? Okay. Oh, that's a really good comment. I want to say something here that I've been planning on saying, and I will say it again at the end of the course. We have a problem. As people involved in church ministry, we have a gigantic problem, and that is time. I'm not talking about the years kind of time. I'm talking about the watch kind of time, or the calendar schedule kind of time. We don't have much free time. And I think that's the work of Satan. I think that Satan encourages us and encourages our culture and encourages our world and our families and all of that stuff to get us so overwhelmed with responsibilities, so overwhelmed with relationships, so overwhelmed with visits, so overwhelmed with people that we're not able to do things we're supposed to do. So I would say that the biggest challenge, because I agree with Samuel. I do know that. I know that you could never do this. It would never happen. You could never change a church. I don't think you could change a church structure in 10 years. I think that would be really hard, because changing the structure has all kinds of problems. However, I think the key that's more important than anything else is the kind of praying that you're going to be doing for the people in your congregation. And that takes time. In order for the kinds of changes that I'm talking about to happen, you don't change the structure first. You change the people. And in order to change the people, it means you got to pray transformational prayers. And that's really hard. It's really, really hard. Because what you have to do, I hope you're all hearing me, I don't know. What you have to do is you have to change the way you pray for people, and you start praying the big prayers for people, and you pray them a lot. What I mean by a lot is you pray for a lot of the people in your church, most of the people in your church who are regular attenders in the church, and you pray that God would transform their lives with these big prayers, like Paul's prayers. And in that lecture, you should go back over that lecture and look at it. Because in that lecture, I talked about the fact that, you can use scripture prayers that are not prayers and take passages like, I pray that they will not have a righteousness of their own derived from the law, but a righteousness which comes from faith. That they may know you and the power of your resurrection, the fellowship of your sufferings. And you can pray those kinds of things for people. But praying, oh God, bless this congregation, or oh God, bless, Yakim. No, that's not enough. It's just not saying, oh God, bless the people. You need to do what Paul did when he prayed. When you read Paul's prayers, they're astonishing. And that's what you need to do. And the reason I'm telling you this, what Samuel said is exactly right. But you don't change the structure. What you do is you begin praying big. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. You begin praying these big prayers for a lot of the people in the church, and you're praying regularly, often praying for them. I don't know how you're going to do it. You guys that have children, or you people that have children, well, then your lives are just completely overwhelmed with taking care of your family, and of course, but somehow you need a miracle, because you're not going to see the changes that need to happen until God is changing the people in your church. And we can't wait until your kids are all grown up. You have to start dealing with this now. So you have to figure out a way that you can have consistent prayer. And there's another problem with prayer. As if that's not enough, finding the time. The other problem is it's really hard to figure out how you should pray. You have to pray big prayers. You have to pray these prayers. They're talking about transformation, not just blessing, but transformation. You have to pray those prayers. But you also have to be able to do it. And one of the problems is that not all of us pray in the same way. What I mean is, some of us use a list when we pray, but for some people, lists don't work. Some of us haven't figured out how to do it yet. Some of us might pray for an hour every day, but pray very little in that hour. Because we just haven't figured out for us how we can make ourselves pray the kinds of things that Paul prayed, and pray for a lot of people those things. We just haven't figured it out. I'm going to tell you something that I never tell people. I mean, never. I just taught a course on prayer at FC College. I never told them this. But I'm gonna tell you, I think that this is the right thing to do. Anyway, I can't pray a list. I mean, reading a list, pretty much, because my brain is just always going everywhere, and I just go through the list of blah, 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 but it's just too fast. So it doesn't work for me. So I have my own learning problems. And so when I pray, I have to pray in such a way that works for me. So I set up a method for praying that helps me to pray for people on a faithful basis. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because then you'll copy it and it might not be right for you. But what I'm saying is that you need to ask God to help you to learn how to pray big prayers, for transformational prayers for a lot of people in the congregation. Because what you're doing, what you have to do is see God transform the lives of the people in your congregation. And if you don't have transformation going on in the church, it's because you're not asking for the transformation to go on in the church. You do not have because you do not ask, according to James. You don't have transformation going on in the church because you're not asking for it. You're not asking God transformational prayers. I pray that the eyes of their hearts will be enlightened, that they'll know what the hope of their calling. You're not asking those things. And so you got to ask God to help you to start praying in that way. Honestly, it was at least a year. It might have been 2 years, but I started praying, God, help me to figure out how to get my prayer life in order. Help me to figure out how to pray faithfully. I don't know. I must have prayed that for like 2 years before things started coming together. I had notes that I would tape on my mirror in my house. And I also had one in my car that I had on my car, and the inside of it that was a prayer. God, help me to get my prayer life in order. Because I just never prayed, because I was never able to figure out what worked for me as far as prayer goes. So you need to pray for yourself first, that you'll actually start praying and actually be able to get into a regular time of prayer. My wife warned me, I'm not allowed to tell you how much time you should be taking on a daily basis. So I'm not allowed to tell you that. But if you're praying for all the people in your church, and if you're especially praying for the people that you think might become elders, but you don't know, and if you're especially praying for people who are involved in ministry, and of course you have to pray for your family on top of that, that's going to take a lot of time. And so you got to kind of have to say, all right, I've got to invest in this. And I don't know how you're going to do that, but there's no choice. If you are so busy doing so many things that you don't have time to pray, you're just too busy. You're just too busy. Samuel.
Sir, I need your guidance in one thing, as I am hearing you about the transformational prayers. Sir, uh, as you said, that it is a long time process, and we have to do the prayer on regular basis for the transformation of people. So, but there's a question comes to mind when I am listening you. The question is that we are praying every day. So after some time, either it comes to our mind that we are repeating the same words and repeating the same things from God. So it will going to detract us, or uh, do some wrong things comes to our mind while we are doing this. So at that moment, what would we do?
Yeah, so that's why I said, and I'm quite serious. Are you done, Samuel, with your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Done.
All right, so that's why I said, and I'm really serious about this, people. I'm not kidding. I'm very serious. I'm just serious as a heart attack. I'm very serious. That you got to pray. You got to learn how to pray. And you got to learn how to pray for you. Because different people are going to pray. When I say for you, I believe that every church minister must learn how to pray for a lot of people, transformational prayers. I think we have so many examples of what Paul prays. I don't think that's accidental. I think he is doing it to model for us what we're supposed to be doing. I have no question about that in my mind. I am very confident if we had just 2 prayers, 3 prayers, but we have way more than that. Way more than that in Paul. And that's just pretty strong indication that Paul is saying, this is what we're supposed to be praying. This is the kind of stuff. So I have no question about that. But ironic, now in your outline, You're the Apostle Paul. You're already praying that way. You already have figured out your prayer style. You've already figured out what you have to do in order to make sure that you're praying that way for a lot of people. All right, so if you're the Apostle Paul, you've already figured it out. So for your outline, this is not an issue. But in real life, I'm going to say what I already said. I prayed for at least a year, and I might have prayed for 2 years before I figured out what method worked for me to help me to keep praying for people, transformational prayers, that what Samuel said, that I wasn't just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't just pray one prayer for all of the people. I pray lots of different prayers. I don't just pray one prayer and I pray that for everybody. No, I don't do that. I pray lots of different prayers for people, lots of different transformational prayers. I mean, we have Paul having lots of different transformational prayers. And plus, I take scriptures like, I pray that John will not be just a hearer of the word, but a doer. I pray you'll put aside all filthiness and all the remains of wickedness. And I pray that John, with humility of mind, will receive the word and plant him, which is able to save his soul. I pray he won't just be a hearer, but a doer. And I pray those things. I mean, that's a prayer that I pray on a regular basis. And I pray lots of different prayers. I have a system. But I don't know if my system, I don't share my system with people because it's mine, because I'm goofy. I have learning disabilities that make it so that I have to do it a certain way in order for me to be able to pray. But Samuel, there are two answers to your question. First, I prayed for 1 or 2 years before God showed me what worked for me. I literally had to pray like every day. I was praying, God, I pray that you'll help me to figure out how to start praying. I just can't figure out how to pray. It took me like a year or 2 years before I finally figured out how to put a prayer ministry together that worked for me. So I'm not going to give you a happy answer. I'm going to say, well, you need to start praying that God will show you how to do this. And you know, when you pray to become consistent in prayer, that's really hard to do because you're not consistent in prayer. So how can you consistently pray that you become consistent in prayer? So what I did, that's why I said, I took little pieces of paper and I wrote on it and said, pray that I'll become consistent in prayer. And I put that on the mirror in my bathroom. And then I had one in my car on what we call a dashboard. And I just taped it on there. And I would see that as I was driving, say, oh God, I just pray you'll help me to become consistent in prayer and help me to figure out how to do it. I prayed that every day because I had notes to myself to pray that so that I would learn how to be consistent in prayer. It took me like 2 years before I started the patterns that I've developed now. I'm 67 years old. It's taken me a long time to be able to put it together. So my biggest answer, Samuel, is that you need to pray that God will show you what's right for you. If I give you my method for prayer, it might not be right for you and it won't do you any good. But God knows what's best for you. You have to be creative sometimes. I use electronic means for prayer. I use my phone a lot. I'm not going to tell you what I do, though. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. Because if I tell you, then my wife said, don't you tell them how to do it. Because they've got to figure out for themselves according to what's good for them. So I'm listening to my wife's advice because she's very smart. She's super smart. All right. So also, I'm going to say what I said again. You're going to need to pray for yourself that you're going to be able to establish a consistent prayer ministry where your mind doesn't wander, where you're not thinking about other things, where you're actually praying for people, and you're actually asking God to do things. So you're going to have to do that. At the beginning of my prayer times every day, I ask God to help me to love him so that when I'm praying, I'm actually loving him and I will love the people for whom I'm praying. I pray that every day, God, help me to love you. And so as I'm praying these things, help me to actually care about you, trust in you, believe in you. And also I pray to help me to love these people. I pray that at the beginning of my prayer time every day. And so when you're asking God to help you to learn to be consistent in prayer, that's one of the things you need to ask him. It stinks that I'm not telling you how to do it, but I can't. Because if there was a special way to make sure that we prayed transformational prayers and we prayed it in faith and we prayed it out of love. And if there's a special way to do that, it would be in the scriptures. It would say, and here's the method, because other religions, that's what they do, right? They have a method to make sure that you pray the right way. God totally doesn't do that. He totally doesn't. He just says pray. But all of us are different. All right, I'm going to say one more thing. When you pray transformational prayers for yourself, you know what happens? Sometimes you'll ask God to change you in an area, and it might be 2, 3, or 4 years of God working to change you. You all know what I'm talking about. You'll struggle with a particular sin, or you struggle with a need in your, I'm talking about character change. And you're asking God to change you as a person, and you pray about it, and you pray about it, and you pray about it. Now, often what we do is give up. You don't want to give up. You never want to give up in prayer. If you're asking God to transform your life, if you're struggling with a sin and you're struggling and struggling, you just can't overcome that sin, and you just want to give up, well, don't give up. Even if you're praying for a year or 2 years or 3 years, don't give up, because you're praying the heart of God. He wants to transform you. You don't know what needs to happen in your life for you to be ready for God to transform you. You don't know what needs to happen. What I'm saying is, He may not be transforming you at the speed that you want to be transformed, because He may be doing lots of different things that He sees as necessary in order for that prayer request to be answered. Because lots of times the things you're asking God to change you in, there are other things that are the real root sin that must be dealt with first before you deal with that sin. You got this sin, God, help me to be patient with my wife. And the real root sin may be something quite different that you need to deal with. And so when you're praying, God's answering the prayers. Because when you ask God to transform you, you're asking the mind of God. And whatever we ask according to the will of God, we will have our answer. He'll do it. But you got to keep persevering. If you give up, then that doesn't do any good. So it's the same thing with praying about prayer as well. You need to just persevere. And that's also true when you're praying for people, big prayers. Don't give up on them. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I promise you, you're praying the heart of God. When you pray transformational prayers, you're praying the heart of God. That's what He wants to do. If we pray according to His will, we will have what we ask for. That's what John tells us. It's John. John says that. John says that in 1 John. John tells us that. So if we pray according to God's will, we'll have what we're asking. So if you're praying for transformation for the people in your congregation, and if you don't give up, and if you keep on persevering and praying for that, and you keep on believing God, you know what's going to happen? He's going to transform their lives. It may be 3 or 4 years, just like with you. That's why I talked about temptation and praying about, God changing you. It takes a long time. Same thing with them. It takes a long time for them too. God is working. He's answering. You're praying the heart of God. He will transform their lives if you don't give up. Keep on praying. By the way, this system of praying for people like this, praying transformational prayers, there's something awesome there that I got to tell you. When you pray these things, after a while, Sam was right. At first, you don't really care about the people. You don't even believe it's going to happen. You just do it because you ought to do it. You don't even think it's going to happen. You don't even understand the prayers. Even if you're praying scripture passages that are not transformational prayers, but scripture passages that you think like, I pray that this person will not worry about what to eat or what drink or what clothing to wear. I pray this person will know that you know they need all these things. But I pray that this person will seek first your kingdom and your righteousness. You don't even know what it means to seek first the kingdom and His righteousness when you pray. You don't even know. You don't know. But as you pray about this week after week, month after month, and then year after year, you start understanding those prayers. And you know what happens to you. When you pray transformational prayers for people, You know what happens? You start believing that God can do that in those people because you don't believe it now. You don't believe that the eyes of their hearts can be enlightened so they can know what is the hope of his calling. What are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints? You don't believe that they can be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width and the length and the height and the breadth and to know the love of Christ. You don't believe that that can actually happen in their lives because you've never seen it happen in people's lives. Oh, like here and there. You've seen where people come to know the love of God. You come to know how long it is and how wide it is and how deep it is and how high it is. Yes, you've seen it happen in a very few occasions, but not very often. And not with the people in your congregation. And now you're asking God to do this. But after you keep praying this week after week, month after month, even year after year, and you're actually starting to believe it and understand it and say, yes, God can do this. You know what happens? You start respecting these people because you believe that God can transform them. And you know what else happens? You start caring about those people in way deeper ways than you've ever cared about them before. And it changes your preaching because now when you preach, you're believing big things for people. Because when you pray this week, not at first it's you just pray rote words. It doesn't mean anything to you. You don't believe it. You just do it because you ought to do it. But after time, after weeks and months and years, and God is changing you and he's molding you so that you start believing these things for these people. And as you're praying this more and more, week after week, month after month, year after year, when you're praying this, it changes your preaching. Because now you believe that God's doing these things in the lives of the people you're preaching to. He's doing these things. He's transforming them. He's making them like Christ. Yes, you still pray for them that they will be healed. You still pray for them that their daughter would come back to faith. You still pray for them those things. That's you do, that they'll get a job. You're praying those things for them too. But when you're praying transformational prayers week after week, month after month, year after year, what happens? God starts transforming them. It transforms your preaching. You're preaching at a much deeper level. Why? Because God's working in the lives of your people. And so this is the most important thing you're doing. Everything else we're talking about, how long does it take we can have elders in the church? Well, yeah, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of transformational prayers where you're praying for people that they will not just be hearers of the word, but doers. And you're not just saying that little phrase, you're doing a whole passage that they would be put aside all filthiness and all the remains of wickedness and receive the word implanted, which is able to save their souls. Oh, I pray that he will not just be a hearer of the word, but a doer, that he'll look intently at your perfect law, Lord, and abide in it. He won't be a forgetful hearer, but an effectual doer. I just ask you, God, to do this in Joachim's life. That's what you pray. That's what you pray. And when God starts answering that prayer 2 years from now, because you keep on praying for 2 or 3 years, but you're praying lots of other things for Joachim too, not just that. And God's big enough that you can pray 40 different things for Joachim. God can hear all 40 of them. And God can be working all 40 of those things at the same time because God is infinite. He can be doing 40 different things in Joachim's life because you're praying 40 different prayers for Joachim. And week after week, month after month, year after year after you're praying these things, God starts transforming his life. And then after God's transformed his life after 3 or 4 or 5 years, and he's growing and knowing all of these things, then when you talk about elders, Joachim's very open to it. Why? Because he's learning to listen to what the word of God says in a very real way, right? See what's going on? That's where it happens. It doesn't happen in the structures. It doesn't happen in the plan. So that your plans that you're doing for how the church is going to be transformed, your plans, of course, are meaningless without prayer. And your plans, they're not going to happen the way you plan it anyway. They're never going to happen the way you plan it. Unless in your plan, the most important part of it is God's work of transformation. Okay, that's a sermon. Sorry. Okay, so where are we? Should I have a lecture to do? Do you have more comments to make? I've said way too much. Oh my gosh, I say too much all the time, but especially in the morning. Should I move on? Where are we?
Sir, I have a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from Elders, the first part of the discussion for transformation of cares. So we were talking about, you asked a question about about working with the few number of people who would be elders in future, and you asked if that work in churches here. So I was just thinking that, so I have a comment and a question. So my comment is that I think it is very important for elders to be trained in order to train the congregation. Like, for example, if we teach somebody or if we train somebody, so we need to have understanding about that subject, or we need to be first trained to train others. So does it work the same way in the church for the elders, that the elders who are going to train the congregation for their service? So should they be trained first? And if yes, then who is the person, or who are the person who can, or who would train the elders?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the first question before you say the second question. So all of you need to hear this. I personally don't think that setting up a program for training elders is a good idea at the beginning. I think the first thing that needs to happen is, okay, so go back and look at the lecture that I did on Jesus's method. So that was, I guess, Wednesday's lecture. So go back and watch it or read the PowerPoint. There are two segments of it. One segment of it is, you know, the plan, the everybody, and then the congregation, ministry workers, the 12, the 3, and the 1. Okay, so that's one part of that lecture. The other part is, how did Jesus, I don't want to say find, he knew what he was doing from the start, but how did he bring these people together, the 12 together? And that's the Gospel of John tells us how he did it. And the reason I'm saying that is, you don't know at the beginning of your plan who's going to be an elder. The way Jesus found his elders, his 12, he brought them into difficult situations. That's what he did. Like Samaritan village, like putting them into a ministry situation that's not dangerous, not a damaging. They were baptizing people. Taking them with him to Jerusalem when he cleansed the temple. Putting them in a situation where they saw everybody leaving. Now, this is what I'm saying. You can't choose your elders at the beginning of your plan. You can't choose your elders for maybe 4 years. You got to be praying for people, deep prayers, these transformational prayers. You got to be giving people tasks to do and see if they do them. So if you've got somebody you think, well, maybe this person's going to be an elder, and you say, you know what? I've got a YouTube video. Do you watch YouTube videos? If you do, I've got this YouTube video that I'd like you to watch by John MacArthur. It's really good. And then they watch it. And you go, I gave him something to do and he did it. That's a good sign. But let's say, for example, they say, yeah, I watch YouTube all the time. You say, you know, I have this sermon by John MacArthur. I think you should watch it. I think it'd be really helpful for you. And you give them that. And then you say, hey, did you watch that sermon? I says, no, I was really busy this week. You go, okay. You give them one other chance like that. And if they don't do it, that person is not the person you're going to be pursuing. Maybe later. What I'm saying is that you take your time in finding out who your leaders are going to be. And it takes like 4 years to figure. I'm literally mean it. I mean it. If you are already that praying person at the beginning of this process, it's going to take 4 years for you to find the people who may become elders. And then Once you see the people that you've given tasks to do and they've done it, and you begin a personal relationship with those people, and you begin praying with those people and encouraging those people, I'm serious, that's what you're going to do. First, you involve them in your life. That's what Jesus did. He invited them to come with him in Capernaum. First, they said, Rabbi, where are you staying? He says, come and see. They stayed with him all day. And then he brings them to Capernaum. He brings them to the wedding in Cana. He brings them to the wedding. So he involves them in his life first. Well, you do those things. And so you don't start training them in year 1 or year 2 or year 3 or year 4, maybe year 4. Year 1, 2, and 3 is finding the people. And you do that by saying, well, praying about it, praying for everybody, praying about particular people. When Jesus chose the 12 apostles, Luke tells us that Jesus stayed up all night praying before he appointed the 12 apostles. What was he praying? Did he know all of the 12? He knew Peter. He knew Nathaniel. Did he know all the 12? I don't know. I have no idea. Why he was praying all night. All I know is that he felt that the choosing of those 12 was so serious, he needed to pray all night about it. So what I'm saying is, once you figure out, I think these are the people, you start by praying, and then you ask them, like I said, you say, well, here's a YouTube. If you watch YouTube, watch this video. If they do watch YouTube and they don't watch the video, and you give them another task like that and they don't do it again, you say, well, this person's not the person. Because Jesus did not seem to look for the people who seemed to be the best qualified. Obviously, if he did that, he wouldn't have chosen fishermen. He wouldn't have chosen fishermen, that's for sure. They're peasants. How on earth could he expect that he would have a ministry that is being run by a bunch of peasants? And that's what they were. They were fishermen. They were peasants. What on earth? Don't believe your commentaries that say that they were middle class. There was no middle class in the Roman Empire in the 1st century, period. That's total nonsense. They were peasants. But Jesus doesn't have a problem with that. And the same thing, and that means he doesn't have a problem as far as you're concerned. He may choose people who are going to be elders that you would not normally have expected, because he doesn't choose the people who are best qualified. He chooses the people in the Gospels who keep following him. So the reason I'm saying this is, you're not even going to talk about a training program for the first 4 years. Once you have people you think would be elders, remember, after 2 years, when you're starting to think they're going to be elders, you're meeting with these people on a regular basis. You're investing in their lives, because before you want to train them on how to study the scriptures, you have to train them in how to love the scriptures. And you don't train people to love the scriptures in a class. You train people to love scriptures because they imitate your love for scriptures. So that means that you're passing on to them a love for the scriptures first. You're passing on to them obedience to the scriptures first. So maybe after 4 years, yes, you could have a small group of the people that you think are going to become elders. And what would you be doing in that small group? You'd be doing Bible study together. You'd be teaching them how to study the Bible. Again, though, it really needs to be that small group with you. That's what needs to happen there. And they're still not elders yet. Some of those people, you give them tasks to do in Bible study and they don't do them. You give them another task to do and they don't do them. You know what happens with those people? You say, you know what? I'm really love to have you in this group where we've been praying together and it's great. But I think right now, I don't think you're able to really keep up with what we need to do in our group where we're praying together, because you're not doing the Bible studies. So I'm going to ask you if it would be okay if you just drop out and come back next year, just for now. But see, you've been working with that person for 4 years, so you know that and they know you. But it's not really going to be a formal class. You're going to do it through a Bible study where you're with them together. Remember, Jesus is with the 12. He's teaching the 12. You've got your 5 or your 6 or your 7, and you're teaching them. And you give them tasks to do, and if they fulfill the tasks, they keep doing the tasks, it means that they're actually following and moving forward. See what I'm saying? It's a very it's not a scheduled thing, it's not an organized thing, but it is organized by God. So if you don't do that, it won't work. God's way of passing on ministry leadership is through personal relationship, not through a class. It just doesn't work. Okay. Hold a second. I see a chat here. Good morning, Dr. Bob. But in most of the areas, MBL and net signals are off in Ashura days. Oh. No problem. What I will do is I will record 2 lectures. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record 2 lectures, and you're going to download those lectures and watch those lectures. You can do it anytime you want. I'm really glad you said that. I forgot about that. Of course, you're right. All right, is that all right? I don't care if it's all right. That's what I'm going to do. I will record 2 lectures, and you can watch those lectures anytime next week, but it has to be next week. Anytime next week. And they will take care of that obligation. Okay? I'm so glad you mentioned that. I forgot all about that. Okay, so on Wednesday and Thursday, I will take care of that by just recording lectures. And so it won't be a Zoom, it will not be a Zoom meeting class on Wednesday and Thursday. It will be a recorded lecture class. Although we could do a recorded lecture and then just we'll just do a recorded lecture, which, by the way, takes me 3 times as long. Well, maybe twice as long as just doing a Zoom class. All right. Okay. Any other comments or questions about what we're talking about today? Isaac, you have your hand up. Oh, Yakub, you're going to say something. Okay. Well, Yakub, were you going to say something?
Yes.
Let Yakub speak first, okay? Isaac, and then after him, you. Okay, go ahead.
Should I talk first?
Please.
Yes. As regards, you have explained the choosing of elders. So this is really very wonderful, because one is usually the main, because I have been as associate pastor with one of my parent church, and we developed almost biggest church in Pakistan through cell system. And we had an associate system, and the one was the leading pastor, and we were I was also working as a teacher, and we had a cell group of about 300 leaders. So what I can say, there is a need to be very close fellowship, but unfortunately there came legal issues and other issues that disrupted our church, and it's about 20 years ago that happened. So something that the outsider intervention that broke up all the system.
Oh my gosh.
But I usually comment on this, that it had 2 reasons. One was the lack of love, and other was lack of knowledge. So the lack of knowledge is compensated by love, and the knowledge was between. So now I understand all the things. There were a lot of things. So I think structure that I have understood now after so many years, that structure is very much important, and usually the charismata is involving or trying to charismata people. They break the structure, but the structure, as you have also passed through all these things, so I understand that the structure is the basic thing that must be maintained with all authority.
Yes.
So then within that, the charismata keeps working. So and then I have seen that as whenever some outer intervention, some very good minister, maybe international or national minister, gets involved into the structure, that has caused breakage many times. I
Oh
have
my
seen
goodness.
whenever a very good, very fine, wonderful preacher enters, and then that breaks the previous structure. Usually this happens. I have seen over and over. So I have understood a lot about the structure and charismata and their role and function and their separation. And one should lead, and he should be one teacher or anybody who is the main leader. He should lead, and others should follow, and they should be in spirit of love and in the for the glory of God. This is what I want to say about these few things.
Wow, that was worth coming to class today for. So Brother Yakub said that it's so true. When he's talking about the structure, we need to have, and this goes back to Zenaria's comment as well, we need to have very well trained elders who read the Word of God and are able to use the Word of God. What does Paul say? To use the Word. So he needs to be able to correct those who are wrong and to encourage those who need encouragement. So he needs to be able to do two things with the Scripture in order to be an elder: to correct bad teaching, and secondly, he needs to be able to encourage people with the Scriptures. And what Brother Yakub said is so true. If we have strong elders whom we have properly trained, and that goes back to Zenari's comment as well, they need to be strong elders who have been properly trained in interpreting the Word of God, how important that is. Then when these very good, very, very good external people come in, these people, when I say charismatic, I don't mean charismatic as far as speaking in tongues kind of charismatic. I mean people who have that kind of ministry that everybody just follow, they listen to, they're excited about, especially these foreigners. But when these people come in, they disrupt the whole system because they don't understand that they still have to put themselves under the elders. And that's the problem. That's the problem. We saw very clearly, it was not any, there was no question about it. We saw very clearly that the charismata are always under the authority of the elders. Always, every single time, your charismata are under the authority of your elders. And if you allow someone who's very powerful, super good preacher, very dynamic, if that person comes in and does not put himself sincerely under the authority of the elders, you got trouble. You've got trouble right away. And he can destroy the work of God, which is a dangerous thing to do, because Paul says that anybody who destroys the body of Christ, God will destroy him. 1 Corinthians says that. Anyone who destroys the body of Christ by causing disunity like that, God will destroy him. Not a good idea to do that. That's a very bad idea. So that's the danger. This is very complicated. I've got 5 minutes left. I've got 2 hands up. So first, Isaac, because you've had your hand.
One more.
Well, okay, Yakub, make it quick because we have 2 more people that have hands up. Go ahead.
Yes, very short. The other aspect I have seen not only in Pakistan but all over the world is the legal aspect of the church, titles, roles. He is the chairman, general secretary, France, and all these things. So we forget the biblical titles, and biblical titles they get in conflict, or rather the legal titles they get more force, and the biblical titles and biblical pattern, and they get loose and they are not so much observed, and then people go to all courts and all. So the very evil thing starts. I think Paul every deal all through life, the legalism. So the legal structure is meddling with the church and biblical structure, and that need to be separated and clearly distinguished and known, and that should be kept under control and under the biblical structure.
Yes, the legal structure, the chairman and the this and that and the other, the legal structure is charisma, not elder. It's charisma. There are leaders who have the charisma of leading. There are teachers who have the charisma of teaching. There are people who take care of money, who have the charisma of taking care of money. All of those people are under the elders, but that means you need to do an awful lot of praying for an awful lot of years. Okay, I'm going to just quickly go to Isaac, and then we have to close the class. Isaac.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for showing another crucial dimension of prayer, transformational prayer, because usually we have intercessions, and in these days we also see another trend. Even we pray for people by mentioning their name, even their weakness or sickness, but they want that at the end of the church service, even after benedictions, that people or clergy or minister may pray for them by laying their hands upon them. So this kind of satisfaction that they are to God even after the service, though prayer leader or in intercessory prayers, we pray for them already. So, sir, when our task, our goal is a praying church, a good praying church, transformational prayers. Sir, when people get involved in such activities that to put the bottle oil and to open the lid of the bottle, so what kind of these prayers they expect from ministers? Because God who works in people, and everything is to be anointed by his name, but there are some psychological drawbacks along with their spiritual activities.
And you know, all of you know that a godly pastor could preach every week, every year for 10 years, that God listens to every one of your prayers exactly the same way, that the pastor doesn't have any more power in his prayer than anybody else. We all can preach that for 10 years, and still people will want a pastor to pray for them. And if it's a foreigner who's a missionary, they'll even want that person more. And if it's somebody famous, that would even be better. Even though, according to Jesus, if a child prays, God hears the same as if Benny Hinn prays. There's no difference. No difference to God. Zero. And even if a pastor is preaching that, it's going to be really hard. I've got something to say about this that might be really helpful. I've got 30 seconds to say it, though. It's going to be impossible for people actually to believe that. That's all over the world. That's especially in South Asia, though. That's a very South Asian thing. That's because of Hinduism and all of that influence from long ago, holy men and stuff like that. However, If you're praying, listen carefully. If you're praying over 4 years for those same people in your church, because you're praying for those people, you're praying for those people on a regular basis, weekly basis or whatever. You're praying that that one particular prayer I mentioned, that they'll come to know with all the saints what is the length and the width and the height and the depth, and know the love of God. Now listen carefully what I'm going to say. If you're praying that, and if you believe that God will answer that prayer, and he will answer that prayer, he wants to. He wants that to happen. The only reason it hasn't happened is because nobody's prayed about it. So if you're praying that God will do that, he wants to do it. Now here's the trick. When your people begin to learn, for example, you're praying that they'll know his grace, know his love. You start praying those prayers and God starts answering those prayers. I think in 4 years, then when you listen carefully, everybody, when after you've been praying for 4 years, these transformational prayers, and they know this love of God, and they're starting to learn about this grace, this astonishing grace, and they're starting to learn these things because this is what we're praying for them. You know what's going to happen in 4 years? When you say, you've been learning so much about God's love and his grace, I think that you should realize that it doesn't matter if I pray or if you pray, or if your next door neighbor prays who's a believer. God hears. He hears not because a holy man prays. He hears because his love is so long and so wide and so high and so deep. And of course he listens. Of course his grace is enough. See, so what I'm saying is that as God begins transforming them to know Christ and to know his love and to know his grace and to know his power and all this stuff, it will be much easier to say those same things. You can come through. It's okay.
I actually need to get to the other side of you, so I'll go let
Yes.
you finish.
Okay. Okay. It's time to go, people. We're 3 minutes past. So I'm going to, and my son-in-law needs the laundry. Okay? So.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. God bless. Take care. Hey, have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not going to call you or wake you up or anything for the next 3 days. Okay? So God bless.